Hey everybody, Matty here with Altcoin Buzz. Happy Tuesday. Just wanted to give you some off-the-cuff, quick election thoughts, what I think a potential Biden presidency, what I think a potential Trump presidency could mean for Bitcoin, and by extension, of course, when I say Bitcoin, I mean the entire cryptocurrency sphere, the blockchain space, the fintech sector as well. I'm going to run you guys through some popular opinions that have been presented today from all kinds of tweets and accounts that I've been following. A lot of people are really on their A1 Twitter game today. We'll discuss that. We'll discuss maybe some of the advantages and disadvantages associated with each candidate. And then we can kind of wrap up. I'll give you guys my final thoughts as to where I think things are going to go in kind of more macro perspective. So as of right now, market is basically flat, just barely down 0.1%, but Bitcoin is actually up a little bit. So you're actually seeing gains in Bitcoin and continued losses really all across the altcoin sector, which actually means that Bitcoin's dominance is growing. It currently sits at 63%. Bitcoin kind of flirting with that $13,800 mark. We're still below 14K, but I think this is the kind of territory right now where you can throw out all sorts of technical analysis. I don't think the charts mean anything. I don't think any kind of TA means anything at the moment. We're going through a very substantial and very significant social event in the form of the US election, and I think markets are going to respond one way or another. The advantage, I would argue, is that there's an upside for either candidate. So whether we see a President Biden or a President Trump, and whether that comes tonight, tomorrow, next week, or next month, hopefully sooner rather than later. But either way, I think Bitcoin stands to gain. I'm going to break down why I think that's the case. All right, before we get into any of that, let's discuss Dan Held's tweet here. He, of course, is representing Kraken Exchange with this very interesting observation: price of Bitcoin at the last 3 US presidential elections. Well, believe it or not, back in 2012, the price of Bitcoin was only $10. Fast forward 4 years to the election of President Trump, Bitcoin sat at $700. And here we are today, just below $13,800. It's a very interesting trend. So you can really see how pronounced the growth is every 4 years once you kind of zoom out and take that macro perspective. Now, nobody's guaranteeing anything, but the suggestion is kind of that, fast forward another 4 years, where do you guys think it's going to be in 2024? Again, once some of this mass adoption really starts moving, the momentum hopefully will continue to be with us. I think the sky's the limit in another 4 years. Tyler Winklevoss here of Gemini, and with a great handle, I might add, at Tyler. That's fantastic. Bitcoin will be the big winner tonight. And for a lot of different reasons that I'm going to get into in a sec when we discuss the candidates, I think I agree with that certainly wholeheartedly, but not to be outdone by his twin brother, Cameron Winklevoss, with this comment: Bitcoin is the candidate you don't need to fact check. And, speaking personally for myself, being kind of a libertarian guy, being a bit of a contrarian and always, opposed to when I do see corruption, whether it's in Washington in politics or otherwise, that's what drew me to blockchain and Bitcoin and ultimately crypto. Is just the beauty and the elegance of the immutable and transparent ledger. I think it's really something that is revolutionary and works on so many more levels that we can even anticipate and think about it. It's really something to behold. So I'm with you, Cameron. Moving right along to some more technical tweets here. Plan B on Twitter, 100 trillion USD is the handle. Bitcoin 200-week moving average is at $7,065 and increasing at 4% every month. Bitcoin is slowly moving away from the 200 weekly moving average. Next, green, yellow, orange, red. It's a positive sign indeed, and Michael Saylor here is kind of reinterpreting it. When I look at this chart, I see energy flowing one way into a monetary network, like a battery charging up to power the world. Every day Bitcoin trades above the 200 weekly moving average, Bitcoin gets stronger, like spinning up a flywheel. Does anyone else see what I see? And Ryan Watkins here of Masari, a great analyst over at that research group, with this kind of tongue-in-cheek observation, but still a valid one. Studies show presidential elections are in fact the leading cause of Bitcoin bull runs. And if you take a look at what the data represents here, well, Obama was elected back in 2012, and you can see there was a 10,324% uptick in Bitcoin over the next couple of years. Subsequently, Trump was elected a few years later, of course, in 2016, and then there was a 2,586% uptick that was enjoyed for another couple of years after that. So if we currently sit at just below $13,800, how many percentage points do we stand to gain in terms of future gain? It's certainly something to consider. Finally, on Twitter here, we have Blockfolio that I gotta say, they've really been upping their Twitter game lately. Kudos to them at Blockfolio. Today marks the 100th day in a row the price of Bitcoin has been above $10,000. And think about the significance of that. It's pretty cool if you're into numerology or anything like that. But I gotta say, this kind of struck me as, wow, almost serendipitous. It was cool. On election day, Bitcoin reaches its 100th day above $10,000. How fitting. And again, I would use the word serendipitous. Very cool. All right, everybody, let's discuss here the candidates of this election. I'm recording this kind of in the mid-afternoon of the 3rd of November. So by the time you're watching this video, maybe a winner will have been declared. Maybe not. I'm hoping it's the kind of thing that can be determined over the next 24 hours or so. But if it takes a week, a month, that's not something that would be ideal. But let's make sure we get it right. I hope either way that a clear and definitive winner is announced. Let's discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages of Joe Biden. And look, whatever your political leanings, guys, are, I'm not going to get into the politics or the merit of a given candidate. But as far as how they'll impact cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and that blockchain sector, that's what we want to talk about here. I think when it comes to Biden, there is the suggestion that there will be a market retracement. Does this impact Bitcoin directly? Well, no, because I think increasingly we've been seeing a decoupling between Bitcoin and the markets. The correlation not only is weakening, but the correlation is inversing itself. And we saw this the other day with a downside trend in the S&P 500, whatever the S&P 400 is. The S&P 500 did a nosedive to the negative side, and Bitcoin actually did the exact opposite. I think we're beginning to see the early stages of this decoupling right now, and Bitcoin is only going to show more and more signs of that decoupling as the years go by. Furthermore, with Joe Biden and the likely increase in taxation that we're going to see under his potential presidency, I think you're going to have a lot more of the libertarian types that are going to be flocking over to Bitcoin, those that haven't already. But not only libertarian individuals, you're going to have libertarian-minded companies, whether they're public or private. We've seen this in the form of MicroStrategy. We've seen this in the form of Square. But now we're having a couple of more big players step up to the plate, including PayPal, and I have no reason to believe they will be the last. These, whether public or private companies, are going to have to look after their treasuries. They're going to have to answer to stockholders. And if deflation is a major issue that the average American is going to be feeling, well, Bitcoin not only becomes a reasonable investment despite the volatility, it becomes in effect a hedge, where you have right now bonds and precious metals and traditional hedge markets which are failing the American investor and the American company, again, with stockholders to whom to answer. I think Bitcoin for that reason becomes very appealing under a Biden presidency. Love him or loathe him, I think Donald Trump and a presidency potentially delivers a couple of advantages for Bitcoin. Generally speaking, you're going to see a more confident market. You're going to see a more confident Wall Street. This is going to hopefully trickle down to the everyday citizen, and maybe that'll mean some more dollars to spend on, let's say, the non-necessities, whether that's Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and altcoin investments. But a general enthusiasm, a general market confidence is going to make its way into the world of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And that's where I think the decoupling paradoxically doesn't really apply anymore, because if the markets are doing well, if your traditional indices, if your NASDAQs, if your Dow Joneses, if your S&Ps 500 are all rising kind of with a tide that's lifting all ships, I am of the belief that this is that same kind of tide that's also going to raise Bitcoin. Now, is Donald Trump going to come down in defense of the American dollar and come down with some authoritative rules and regulations that continue to hinder the progress of American exchanges? Possibly, but if that does turn out to be the case, then I think those institutions will just flock to crypto havens, be it Malta, be it other locations around the globe. They'll just relocate very simply. That's all it takes. In the short term, I think there may be some difficulties and some obstacles faced if he does choose to go that route as president. We've seen already quite a clampdown on the part of the SEC and on the part of the CFTC as well. We've seen that with BitMEX. I'm sure others will follow. Look, it's the president's job ultimately to defend the United States dollar. Whatever your opinion is of the dollar and the system that props it up, that is the job of the commander-in-chief to make sure that it is secure and ultimately safe against its competition. And Bitcoin certainly is competing against the American dollar. What gives me a lot of confidence, and I'm going to sound like John McAfee for a second here, is something actually that is encapsulated in a tweet, not a tweet actually, this is a community post over on YouTube that we put out earlier, but the government is absolutely incompetent for the most part, and even if they were 100% competent, even if they knocked every project out of the park, they have no ability to control Bitcoin or blockchain or cryptocurrency. It's simply out of their hands. So I think this summarizes and kind of captures the sentiment here, the government banning Bitcoin. This is about as effective as they could ever hope to be. They can come out with decrees and they can come out with rules and regulations and they can condemn all of cryptocurrency if they want. They can even make examples out of people. They can jail those individuals that stick their necks out too far, but ultimately you cannot quash this movement. It's just not the kind of movement that you can pinpoint in any one specific way. That's the beauty of decentralization, as I was discussing earlier. I hope you have voted members of the Altcoin Buzz army if you are indeed a citizen of the United States. I hope you lent your voice to a decision really that's going to impact not only that country, but all the rest of the world. You know, I am quite involved in politics. I like to follow at an amateur level. Although I'm Canadian, you know, I've talked about that before. I am not American, but there's something about American politics that just affects every other nation across the globe. So I hope you've exercised your civil and patriotic duty one way or another, whatever your leanings may be politically. But I think it's going to be an interesting show that's about to unfold. And I think we here in this space that we occupy stand to benefit perhaps more than anybody else in the coming months and the coming years. So it may be a bumpy ride at times, but it's certainly going to be an exciting one. And I think whatever you have to say, there will be no shortage of memes going forward. And that's certainly one of the advantages of being in this space. And that's the sentiment that I kind of want to leave things on here. In closing, my suggestion to you and my point of view is that Bitcoin is too big for any one branch of government, for any one nation, any one individual or consortium to control. It was designed that way with purpose, and so far it's working very well. More and more people are catching on, and it's just the kind of thing that if we all collectively believe in it, and believe me, that belief is only growing and strengthening with time, if we all collectively believe in it, it's here to stay and it's not going anywhere. It's getting more and more powerful and more relevant. So that is my contention. I think Bitcoin is going up. It's going to continue to go up bigly. And in many ways, it's quite beautiful to sit back and observe just how elegant this politically agnostic system is that Satoshi Nakamoto designed. It really is something to behold. Be safe, everybody. Best of luck if you choose to invest. As always, we hope to see you again soon in our next video. Take care.